All right, we are at the top of the hour, and I hope you guys are having an awesome evening. My name is Dr. Mike Okouchi, and I'm going to walk you guys through the Transformation Kit. So, if this is the first time you guys are seeing a Transformation Kit, I'm going to give you all the information that you need to successfully navigate your next 28 days. If this is your second time or third time, congratulations for getting through your first 28 days. Take out a pen and a paper, and there'll be some things that I'll go over here that will definitely open up your mind a little bit. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to have let me open up the chat over here. If you guys do have questions during the when I'm going over all this, you guys can jump into the chat. I can see the chat. So yeah, feel free to jump over in the chat, but I have everybody muted for now. All right. So what we're going to go over in this, I'm going to walk you through obviously the 28-day transformation kit, but I wanted to relate to the degenerative disease process and to show you guys that the system is not necessarily just about weight loss. Okay, when we look at gaining excess weight, when we look at the process of obesity is just a side effect of your body not functioning properly. And when we look at the degenerative disease process that comes with aging and comes in with our modern day lifestyle, we see all of these different facets that are, missing in our modern diet, and this is what the transformation kit will plug some of those holes. All right, so the disclaimer, I got to put this up, is that this is a basically just for informational purposes only. This is not meant to diagnose, treat, or cure. Before partaking in any type of program, make sure that you contact your physician. So got that out of the way. Now, just some basic metabolic facts. Every single cell in your body, its whole goal is to take in nutrients and make energy. So without energy in the form of what we call ATP, your cells cannot function. It's just like a car that doesn't have a spark plug and gasoline. It's useless, right? You could have the nicest car in the world, but if you don't have the proper fuel and you don't have the proper ignition process to ignite the fuel, it's not going to work properly. Okay. So when we look at your every single cell in your body, just the mere fact of it living, you are producing waste, and all of these waste products will alter the pH balance. Okay? These are what we call organic acids. And with these organic acids, they're going to alter the pH of the extracellular fluid, all that stuff that surrounds a cell. Now, the physiological pH, all that stuff around the cell, should be between 7.3, 7.4. Now, when we look at the pH scale, if you are lower in the pH scale, that's what we call acidosis, and you're in the higher in the pH scale, that's what we call alkalosis. So 7 is neutral. Anything above 7 is alkaline. Anything below 7 is considered acidic. And if you go above or below that physiological pH range, optimal cellular function just doesn't happen. Right? Our body is like Goldilocks. We need it in that just the right zone. Okay. Now, what happens when you start altering cellular function? Well, we see all of these things start popping up, right? We see what we call chronic degenerative diseases, things like heart disease, cancer, lung issues, strokes, Alzheimer's, diabetes. When we look at the current statistics, 7 out of the 10 are chronic degenerative diseases. Now, you rewind 50, 60, 70 years ago, we were mainly seeing infectious diseases. We kind of eradicated a lot of those infectious diseases, but now we started seeing things like cancer, heart disease, lung issues. All of these things start to rise. And the thought process was, well, maybe it's just because we are increasing the lifespan of a person. right? And that's partly true. But what's really at the forefront of it is that we have a mismatch between our lifestyle and our genetics. See, a lot of times we blame genes, right? We say, oh, obesity, heart disease, all that stuff runs in my family. You can't just blame the genes because genes are just light switches, right? You have all these light switches that account for these different disease processes. Now, what turns on those genes? Lifestyle factors. This is what we call epigenetic factors. So if you look back, even just 100 years ago, our level of activity and what we ate is totally different than what we're currently doing, right? We get less movement and we eat totally different than what we've done for thousands of years before that. So our genes are accustomed to a certain lifestyle. It's accustomed to a certain food intake and a certain way that we eat foods. What I mean by that is, I'll get into it a little bit later, but what I mean in terms of how we eat is feast and famine. Nowadays, we just our modern day lifestyle is just feast, feast, feast. We don't have no times of famine. All right. So if our genes have been attuned to these types of lifestyle, but then now we give it a different type of input, we're going to get a different type of output. Now, when we look at the cause of dis-ease, we point to these other things, right? We've pointed to high calories for weight gain. We've pointed towards environmental toxins, and we've pointed towards stressors. But all of these things do something in the body, and it causes a stress upon the cells. And what happens with the stress upon the cells is that it alters the body's pH. Now, when you have altered body pH and you create what's called systemic metabolic acidosis, this is when the cells respond, right? The cell always responds to an environmental factor. That's the way the cells function. That for example, if you go into a hot room, the environment, raising of temperature, creates a cellular response of perspiration. That's just how the cells respond. It's called adaptation. And unfortunately, chronic degenerative diseases have become the way that our body adapts to the environmental inputs that we've been giving it. Now, when we look at the human lifespan, when we see a baby born, we have what we call high cellular resilience here. Okay? Our cells are able to respond and withstand all types of stressors. It can withstand all types of toxicity. It can withstand different types of trauma. But as we age, what happens is that resilience decreases and cellular degeneration increases. Okay. Now, when you reach that tipping point, that cellular resilience decreases and cellular degeneration increases, that's when you start seeing that symptomatic picture. Now, the whole goal of this is to maintain that cellular resilience while staving off that cellular degeneration. So that's the whole goal and what we deem longevity. Now, there was a guy, his last name was Freeze. And what he basically said was that in the ideal case, all healthy citizens of a modern society will survive to an advanced age with their vigor and functional independence maintained, and morbidity and disability will be compressed into a relatively short period before death occurs at around the age of 85. Basically, what he was saying was that your lifespan and your health span should equate to each other. So if your lifespan was 85 years, your health span should be 84 years and 364 days. That's what it should be, right? In an ideal sense. But what's happened is that our lifespan is like 85 years, 90, whatever, but our health span is about 35. And this is what I typically see in practice is that most people start losing their health at around age 30, 35. And then they end up going on all of these medications and they become a prisoner to their own body. Now, the only reason for that is because of lifestyle. And like I said in this slide, it's a mismatch between our lifestyle, our diet, and our genetics. Okay. Now, why do I feel that the transformation kit plugs a lot of those holes? Well, for one reason is that we're going back to what our body is accustomed to, which is a whole food, nutrient dense diet. There was a guy, a dentist by the name of Weston A. Price, and he wrote a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. What he did was he looked at all these indigenous tribes all throughout the world, and he saw, okay, what was their health status? And he was basically looking at their dental arches and looking at how many cavities they had. He was a dentist, right? So he went around the world, and what he saw was that all these indigenous tribes had perfect teeth. And that the moment that they started adapting a different type of lifestyle, a more of a westernized, refined foods, what he's found was that it affected their dental arches and it affected their dental picture. So a lot of them, he developed more cavities. They needed more dental work done. But the surprising thing was he found that when they switched back to it, the body readapted and health came back. And every single one of them had one thing in common. Now, what a lot of these nutritionists were looking for was, what was the silver bullet, right? What's the optimal diet? And there wasn't a single optimal diet, because a lot of these different indigenous tribes had various foods that they were consuming. But they all had one thing in common, which was a whole food natural diet that was according to what was in their local environment, what was locally grown, what was in season, and it was right there. And that's what we've adopted within the transformation kit. So the transformation kit consists of the Yes Shake, consists of alkali, passion, pure, and resolve. And I'll get into what each one basically covers. But when we look at the eating plan, right? This is what everybody wants to focus on, right? Well, okay, well, how do I eat? Why do I eat? And the reason why we have these orange days and blue days is because it follows how we would naturally eat if we were in a hunter-gatherer society, meaning that we go through feast and famine. So there are times when you're not just going to have um, a lion lying around that you could go and hunt and eat, right? You have to go and hunt and look for that. And in those times, you would be in a place of famine. And our bodies are accustomed to being famine. That's why we store fat. We store fat for times of famine. Then we have times of feast, right? Because if famine goes on too long, then you die, right? But if you find food, then our body, what it does is it takes that, utilizes some for energy, utilizes it for normal cellular function, and then stores it for the next time we have famine. So if you see the orange days is the time where we're going through that famine, okay? And what we're playing with here is these two hormones called insulin and glucagon. And when we look at all the different obesity studies, the obesity studies always point towards insulin being the main culprit. And it's not necessarily a low carbohydrate or a high fat. It has to do with what is the insulin load that's happening on your body. That's it. And now the fact of the matter is that proteins will create an insulin response. Okay. And a lot of times people just think, well, if I just do a low carbohydrate diet, I'm going to lose weight. Well, that's partly true, right? Because you're focused on the weight. but at the same time, you're not doing anything to restore nutrients. And I'll get into why that's so important here. Okay. So when we're going through the feast and famine, we are decreasing the insulin load during famine times, and we're increasing the insulin load during feasts. This is how it's normally supposed to happen. So when you take out your little pamphlet that you guys get in the transformation kit, you'll be able to see this, and it has you basically all 28 days laid out, and you go from orange days, blue days, orange days, blue days, orange days, blue days, and then like on the last 2 blue days they give you a free day. Okay, for the average person, they may do well on a free day. For some people, I don't recommend actually doing the free day, and there's a couple reasons. One is a mindset thing. Okay. What happens is that people, when they go through their first 28 days, they're looking forward to that free day, and they really just kill their body's metabolism. Okay. In the booklet, it says try to keep under 700 to 900 calories or whatever. I find that a lot of people don't hold to that. They go way overboard and they just binge. And what happens is those, going through those feast and famine days, you throw your metabolic rate off completely. So it's basically like you're back at square one. Okay. So the key takeaway out of all of this is that the less insulin load you have in circulation, the more you're going to able to mobilize fat for energy. Because when insulin is around, it's next to impossible to burn fat for energy. If your insulin load is high, you will always be storing for energy. You'll never be burning off fat. You'll actually only be utilizing 2 fuel sources. One is carbohydrates and the other one is protein. And this is when people just focus on weight loss, they're burning off muscle tissue. That's not a good thing, because guess what is a muscle in your body? Your heart. So you do not want to rely on just protein as a fuel source in your body, because you can start breaking your heart down. All right. When you look at the meal cards or in the booklet, you'll see it's broken up into your protein days and your meal days, your orange days and blue days. And there's different columns according to your goal weight. Okay. So the advice that I give on this is, because it's not really clear cut for a lot of people, and this is a common question that I have. All right. And the common question for people is like, well, say, why wouldn't my goal weight be in column 1 or column 2? I usually shoot for somewhere between 15 to 20. Okay. So 20 pounds, I should say. So if your current weight is 200, you want to shoot for somewhere between 15 to 20 less than that. That's a good place to start, and that's where you would fit yourself into one of these columns. And the blue days is basically the same thing as your protein days, except you are adding in resolve, things like that, and then you are having your lunches. This is what everybody looks forward to, right? This is what makes the orange days doable, is knowing that you're gonna get that meal day, right? And what you're doing here, by the way, what you're doing with all of this is you're retraining your brain. Okay, so when you look at the idea behind weight loss is you're basically just playing with the amount of mass in your body. Okay. So if you look at, you guys may have seen pictures on social media where fat and muscle tissue, they take up, or muscle tissue takes up less volume than fat does. Okay. The same amount of weight, muscle will always take up less volume. So I always tell people, don't necessarily go according to just weight, but also look at your measurements, because you may actually maintain your weight or you may actually gain weight, but you will lose inches. Okay, so inches is actually a more viable way to see your progress. Now, let me go over the constituents of the transformation kit and why these were put together this way. Okay, these all work together synergistically. So when we look at the shakes, what the shakes are doing is it provides your body with a usable, highly digestible protein. Okay, and the reason for that is one, everything in your body is made out of proteins. So if you want to improve organ function, if we want to improve immune function, we want to improve hormonal function, you need proteins because those are the building blocks of it all. Now, in cases of degenerative diseases, what happens is that you're not able to digest and assimilate and utilize the proteins that you're eating. So what the Yes Shakes is a highly digestible and usable form that your body can make all these repairs in your body. That's essentially what it's doing. Alkalite is basically going to curb the acidotic stress that's been going on, because as the degenerative process increases, what happens is that the cells become less efficient at making energy, and it becomes less efficient at curbing the acidic load created by the metabolic process of the cell. It's basically like an old car that just doesn't have the proper exhaust. Exhaust is just leaking everywhere. You're not burning fuel properly. What alkalite is doing is just buffering all of that exhaust in your body while you rebuild it with the proteins that you're getting from Yes. Now, passion, what that does is like a fuel additive. It's giving your body that boost in metabolism, just getting everything moving better in your metabolic rate. Pure is going to help to detoxify. So it's just going to clean out, one, your colon, and it's going to clean out your liver as well. It really just supports the different detoxification pathways. And then Resolve helps with satiety. That's one of the biggest issues with people whenever they go on weight loss systems is they feel hungry. And the hunger part is the most difficult part to break. Resolve will help with satiety, and then overall digestive improvements will occur. Now, when we look at your journey through those 28 days, a lot of things will happen. Your body's going to go through these various physiological changes. And a lot of times, things may not feel like they're supposed to, right? When you're making changes, like say you wanted to clean out your house, and your house hasn't been cleaned for 20 years, you're going to kick up some dust. Things are not going to be in the places that you notice them to be. Things may get crowded. You may have to do more work because you have to carry things out. This is what's happening in your body. Because one, you're giving it high quality nutrients and it's been deprived of. And now it says, wow, thanks. Now I can do the work that it needs to do. And the thing about a cell, if you want to keep a cell healthy, one, you give it the proper nutrients that it needs. And then the second part is you extract, take away the toxins that's being produced. Right? That's basically how you maintain cellular health. So if you're not doing either one of those things, the cell gets bogged down. So now you're giving it high quality nutrients, and then you're also buffering that acidic load on the extracellular matrix, and then you're also balancing the insulin response. So the first initial days, your body's going to be like, hey, we got all the things we need to function. So it's going to start detoxifying. It's going to start saying, hey, let's start cleaning house. During this time, this is what like kicking up dust in your home. You may notice muscle aches, headaches, rashes. You may notice gastrointestinal changes. You go to the bathroom more. You may notice either fatigue or too much energy. You may notice changes in mood. All of these things are happening because your body is just doing its thing. It's cleaning house. Then by like week 2, your body starts to clean everything out, because it usually takes about 7 days for it to really start moving along, and then it becomes more efficient at detoxification. And then by week 2, now it can start repairing. It can start taking all of those proteins that you're getting in. It can take in all of the nutrients that it's been missing, and it starts to repair. It starts to repair all those damaged cells. Now, this is the most common time where people notice weight loss plateaus, right? If you're using weight as your measuring stick, you may notice, hey, after my first week, I dropped 7 pounds, I dropped 8 pounds, but on day 8, 9, 10, I didn't see that needle move. And people get all freaked out. What you got to understand here is that your cells are doing its thing. It's repairing, it's going through cellular changes to fill in the gaps. Remember I said sometimes you may have, in chronic degenerative diseases, you may have cellular breakdown. So you may have organs that have lost a lot of cells. So during this time, your body's actually building back up. And fortunately, that it's able to do that, you may not notice a loss in weight because protein is being added to your body. Now, weeks 3 and beyond, this is when all of those gaps are restored. Okay? All the gaps in your nutrition, all those nutrient needs gets restored. Okay? You may notice during this time that your body now becomes more efficient at switching its energy sources. It'll be able to switch from carbohydrates to fats to proteins. It'll be able to switch back and forth a lot more easily. Right? What you're trying to do throughout your entire transformation is to make your body more efficient. That's the whole goal. So how do you get your best results out of your T-kit? One, you got to follow the system. Okay? Got to follow the system. Don't try and utilize it and then make it, something else or whatever. And because a lot of times people come in and they have a preconceived notion. They may have done all these other types of dietary systems on the market and they're accustomed to that. Follow the system that we've laid in place because there's a lot of research that went into what we put together. And we've seen amazing results over these past 10 years. Okay. Next, create your daily plan. You got to have a plan. Okay. And in your workbook, there's a thing that you can fill out and all that kind of stuff. Next thing is you want to wake up in gratitude and solitude. Every morning you get up, make sure you're in a state of gratitude. One big reason behind that is you're decreasing that stress response. Okay. And then the next thing is you want to feel great while you're doing the system. You want to make sure that you're focused on building health. Your mindset, you should be focused on improving cellular function rather than weight loss. Okay? Weight loss will come as a fact of rebuilding your entire cellular health. Now you got to understand, your body has over 37 trillion cells, but 37 trillion cells in the average person. It takes some time, right, to go through and make sure all of those cells are working properly. Right? It may have taken you 20 years to get to the state that you are in. Right? 28 days is actually fairly quick. And what this does is it sets your body into the right course of action. Okay. Now, some tips and tricks. Some people may know or may not be able to jump straight into a transformation kit. What I encourage you to do is start slow. Some of you may need to just start with alkali, enzymes, and pure, just to curb that acidic load on the body, get your body to start digesting better and detoxifying, opening up those channels of detoxification. Some things you may, when you start a transformation kit, you may want to add in enzymes and dream because getting proper amounts of sleep is very essential to cellular function. And then enzymes is just going to help you to improve your digestion because it's not necessarily just about eating something. It's about digesting it, breaking it down, assimilating it, and getting that nutrient all the way to the cell. Okay. And that's what digestive enzymes will do. Now, for some of you, you may have extreme fatigue. Now, what I would recommend is not to be on any type of passion or thermal burn while on the T-kit, because you may push your stress response system too much. Instead, substitute that the times when you would take passion or thermal burn, you want to substitute that with lean greens. Okay, lean greens has what we call adaptogens that will help with that stress response. Some of you guys may notice you get stalled, because sometimes what you need to do is you just need to reboot the system. Okay? What I do with some of my patients is we do a 2-day fast where we're just taking in liquids, taking in alkali, enzymes, and fun, and just added on pH 2O, right? So you guys can add that in for 2 days, and then go on the transformation kit for 2 weeks, take 1 week off, and then go back for another 2 weeks. And then try adding in grass-fed butter because it has a lot of CLA, conjugated linoleic acid. Okay. What you want to do is you just want to change the metabolic rate of the body. Right. That's how you break out of a stall. Now you've done your 28 days. Hooray! You've noticed amazing transformation. What's next? Right. Some of you, if you haven't reached your goal, you may want to just continue on with another transformation kit. I don't recommend going more than about 3 months on it. Okay, consecutive, I mean. So you can continue on a transformation kit, but for most people, I want you guys to be on at least these 4 products: alkaline enzymes, pH 2, and lean greens. These 4 products will cover the majority of the bases for your nutritional needs. Okay, so do a T kit, yay, you notice some changes, and then continue on here, and then utilize the meal plan and the tips that you learned, and the habits that you learned through the 28 days, and continue that through the rest of your life. Now, I've seen a question come in. Myra asked, what is the reasoning behind having the yes shakes 30 minutes after passion and alkali upon waking up? So when you first wake up, what you want to do is you want to hydrate your body. And that's essentially what alkali does as a secondary response. So when your body is curbing that acidic waste, you are actually making the byproduct of that. You're making water. And you're going to hydrate your body, because when you're asleep, you actually dehydrate. So you're going to have your state of dehydration. And then the reason why we go about half an hour, okay, with yes, is that we just want to give your body that time to get its metabolic rate up, and then give it the proteins that it needs to instantiate hormonal production. And that's essentially what happens when we start giving the undenatured whey protein. Right? Other than that, there's no real secret behind that. Next question I see here is, people look at nutritional facts of lean greens and yes, and they see it doesn't have a lot. So here's the thing about it is, when people start looking at things like that, I mean, yeah, they may be educated about that, but what we're trying to do, and like I said in all of this, is we're working on cellular function, and we're instantiating cellular function. None of these things is meant to replace, and again, I have to reiterate, none of these things are meant to replace your standard whole food diet. And that's why when you look in the videos, we always talk about you can still eat real food. And that's the beauty of it all, is that we're not taking you away from eating food. Because at the end of the day, our bodies are accustomed to eating food. It's not accustomed to using supplementation as the be-all and end-all. All we're trying to do is fill in the gaps that's currently missing. That's all we're trying to do there. Another one is, are there negative effects to individuals who choose to use the T-kits for more than 3 months? Not necessarily a bad thing, but what I see what we call the law of diminishing returns. Okay? So I would rather see a person just take a break, just utilize like alkaline enzymes, pH2O, get their diet going, work on that, rather than jumping on another T kit, because then the body is basically really just plateaued out, because it's like that became its new norm. And we don't want it to be that new norm there. We want you to follow your body, or the natural response of how the body would function in nature. That's the reason. Question. Let's see. Whoops. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Can you do intermittent fasting to maintain after the T kit? What products would you recommend we use during the fast period of intermittent fasting? Yeah, intermittent fasting, if your body can handle it, most people can, but a lot of people, if you're stressed out and you have too much issues going on, if we have a serious health condition, intermittent fasting may not be the best thing. There are other things that you'd need to do, and you need to work with a qualified physician for that. But if you do utilize intermittent fasting, I use pH2O, alkalite. I have noticed that utilizing passion can break people out of a fast. So sometimes I don't, for some people I don't. And we use testing methods and all that kind of stuff. But for the average person, if you're not testing by utilizing blood glucose monitoring and all that kind of stuff, alkalite, even lean greens, fun, all that stuff you can utilize during an intermittent fast. Another question. Are there products to avoid for people who are on blood thinners? Yes. Obviously, if you don't want to be taking higher amounts of fish oils, alkalite for some people that are on blood thinners, and pH2O as well. Can thermal burn break a fast? For most people, no, but I've seen it for some people. And the reason why I say that is for some people, when you create, or if you're utilizing some type of caffeine, you do create a cortisol response. And with that, you do create an insulin response. So if your body's hormonal output isn't balanced, and you're pushing that, you may actually create more of an insulin response in the body. So that's kind of where things are at with that. So again, guys, we are going to do our best to make this a weekly thing on Tuesdays. So Tuesdays, I want to dedicate to our product training and helping you guys to learn more and dive deeper into the different products. And if you guys have suggestions or questions or whatever, you guys can always feel free to reach out to me. Invite your preferred customers, invite family members who may have questions about this stuff and just want to learn more. But our whole goal is to just educate the world and create and transform the lives of millions of people all around the world. So till next week, we will see you guys again. Transform lives, be well, and aloha.